We will get even more clarity in the SEC East this Saturday as number 19 Kentucky takes on number 3 Tennessee in Knoxville. And guys, this should be a fun one. Many people are going to be quick to write this game off, saying Tennessee's got it in the bag. It's over. And I would say not so fast. We should be in for a fun matchup on Saturday night, despite the fact that Tennessee has dominated this series. The Volunteers losing just 3 times to the Wildcats since 1985. Tennessee pulled off the upset last year, 45-42 in Lexington, and now Kentucky is looking to get their revenge and return the favor on Tennessee's home turf. The question is, can the Wildcats do it, and can they create chaos, not just in the SEC East, but in the playoff race as well? So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys, as we are ready to break down, analyze, and predict Saturday's matchup between the Wildcats and the Volunteers. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country for one of the lowest prices in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national analysts and handicappers each of the last 4 years. Do not miss out on those picks, guys. Come win with us here at the Gridiron Expert and become a part of our GE Nation. The link down in the description below. So let's just go ahead and dive into the analysis, guys. Let's dive into these two teams. And we'll start with Kentucky, the team that is ranked 19th in the country and probably could be ranked a little bit higher had Will Levis not gotten hurt and the Wildcats had beaten South Carolina a few weeks ago. But regardless, this is still a top 20 matchup, and regardless, Kentucky is still a dang good football team. This team for Kentucky, guys, their offense in particular, they seem to have found life against Mississippi State right before their bye week. They took down the Bulldogs by 10 points and really were almost unstoppable offensively. We know Will Levis, their quarterback, is phenomenal. We know he's great. They're averaging over 260 passing yards per game this year. Levis has over 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. Some have him pegged as the number 1 draft prospect heading into next year's NFL draft. Wouldn't go that far, but he's still a dang good quarterback. What Kentucky needed the most was help on the ground. They needed some sort of ground game. Heading into that Mississippi State game, they were averaging less than 100 rushing yards per game. By the time that Saturday night was over, Kentucky had over 230 rushing yards per game. They rushed for 239 against the Bulldogs and are now averaging 113.4 rushing yards per game. Now again, that's not the best mark in the world, but they had to find a way to make sure they were no longer one-dimensional. That's really what they were. Chris Rodriguez came in, had 197 against Mississippi State, has given that rushing game a boost. You have Rodriguez, you have Cavassier Smoke, and they're a great complement to what Will Levis was already doing in the passing game. And to beat Tennessee and that Tennessee offense, you have to have balance and you have to be electric on both sides, through the air and on the ground. Kentucky can play like they did against Mississippi State. They have a chance on offense in this game. Because we say you have to keep up with the Volunteers, right? You've got to keep up with them. Why? Because they have arguably the best offense in the country. The Volunteers averaging 50.1 points per game. They're averaging 571.7 yards per game. They're averaging over 368 passing yards per game. They're averaging over 200 rushing yards per game. This offense, guys, dang near unstoppable. No one's been able to do it. You know, Pittsburgh couldn't do it. Florida couldn't do it. Alabama couldn't do it. Tennessee getting their bye week right after, that's practically a bye week, taking down UT Martin, and then coming off that win over Alabama, defeating UT Martin, and now coming into this game against Kentucky. You look against Hendon Hooker, guys, and what he's done. That's really the Tennessee offense here. He's the reason for their success and how well they have played. Over 2,000 passing yards for Hooker already this year, 18 touchdowns to just 1 interception. Keep in mind, last year he only threw 3 interceptions, so Hooker continues to do such a phenomenal job of taking care of the football. You take care of the football, that results into winning football. Hooker is doing that. He also has 315 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on the year. He's a guy that, many people don't view him as a dual threat quarterback, but his ability to escape the pocket, his ability just to pick up 5 or 6 yards on a quick scramble, that's very, to me, undervalued. It's such a big part of what Tennessee is doing and such a major reason why they're such a threat offensively. But Tennessee also has about 1 million other weapons. I said in a previous video that I think the top 2 offenses in the country are Ohio State and Tennessee, not just because they have 2 great quarterbacks, but because they have a great supporting cast around them. Tennessee has a guy like Jalen Hyatt, 769 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 of them coming against Alabama just 2 weeks ago. The ground game, they've got a guy like Jalen Wright, they've got a guy like Jabari Small. both of them having rushed for over 300 yards, plus their quarterbacks rushed for over 300 yards as well. This Tennessee offense is one of the most electric, fast-paced ones in the country, and Kentucky's going to need everything they can offensively to keep up with it, but more specifically, they're going to need as much as they can defensively to try to slow them down. Kentucky guys did a pretty good job against the offenses they face. Let's say that. They have faced Florida, they have faced Ole Miss, and they have faced Mississippi State. All three pretty solid offenses, and the Kentucky defense held their own. They held Mississippi State to just 225 total yards on the day. They held Ole Miss to 213 passing yards and just 399 total, which sounds like a lot, but when you realize Ole Miss is averaging well over 450, sometimes close to 500, not too bad. Kentucky only lost that game by 3. And they held Florida back in week 2, held them to 279 total yards. So the Wildcats are no stranger to strong offenses. They're no stranger to electric offenses. And what Kentucky did in those 3 games that we just mentioned, again, they went 2-1 in those games, is they took away the strengths of their opponents. Against Florida, that was the game right after Florida torched Utah. They were able to limit Anthony Richardson. Had to make him pass. He couldn't do it. He had nothing going on the ground. They took away Anthony Richardson. Against Ole Miss, they allowed Ole Miss to run for about 186 yards, but they limited the passing game, limited the deep throws from Jackson Dart, and did a pretty good job of trying to create turnovers and creating pressure on him. Against Mississippi State, the air raid offense, they limited the passing game, held them to like 223 passing yards, 203 passing yards, something like that. They limited the air raid, one that's averaging over 330 passing yards per game. They held Mississippi State to 225 total yards on the day. So that's what Kentucky has to do here. They've got to take away Tennessee's strength. And what is Tennessee's strength? It's Hendon Hooker. The Wildcats are only giving up 178 passing yards per game this year. They're just giving up 117 rushing yards per game this year. They're giving up just 16.4 passing yards, points per game this year. It's not bad. The Kentucky defense is not that bad, but they're facing their toughest test they've seen all year. To win this game, to keep themselves in this game, they have to take away Hendon Hooker. How do you do that? You create turnovers, you force Tennessee into second and third and long situations, and you do not allow him to extend the plays with his legs. You limit the passing game and say, Tennessee, if you want to beat us, you've got to beat us on the ground. Tennessee has the talent to do it, but if you limit them, make them one-dimensional where Hendon Hooker is almost a non-factor, Kentucky's going to be in this game until the end. Looking at Tennessee, their defense is a little bit more vulnerable. They're allowing just 90.9 rushing yards per game. That's not bad and not good news for Kentucky, who's still trying to establish the run game. But the Volunteers are giving up 329.7 passing yards per game. Allowed a lot to Bryce Young, allowed more than expected even last week to UT Martin, despite the Volunteers blowing them out when it was all said and done. The Volunteers secondary is one of the worst in the entire country. Worst in the entire country. And you would think that Will Levis might be able to come in there and exploit that. And that's what we said. If you're Kentucky, you've got to meet them and match them step for step for step. And if they can get just a few stops on Tennessee and convert, they have a chance in this game. They have a shot in this game. Not very often do you see Tennessee get stopped. Not many times do you see them punt. But if Kentucky can do that and then turn around and go score by exploiting the Tennessee secondary, Wildcats have a chance to go down there and win. That's what they have to do. But Tennessee, ultimately, guys, in a game like this, all they have to do, we always say, if you have a good enough offense, one that's averaging over 50 yards or 50 points per game, you don't have to have that great of a defense, right? All you need your defense to do is get 1 or 2 stops and you're good to go. And that's what Tennessee has to do. If Tennessee can get 1 or 2 stops in this game and get Kentucky down early, get them down 10-0, 14-0, or just 10 or 14 at any point in the game where Kentucky is playing from behind by 2 possessions, the game's over. Because I don't view Kentucky's defense being able to consistently stop Tennessee to allow their offense to get themselves back in it. And that's our final pick, guys. I think this game will be good. I think it will be close for a little while, but ultimately Tennessee is going to pull away in this game. At home, at night, Neyland Stadium, rocking. You're the number 3 team in the country. Yes, Tennessee does have to be careful not to look ahead to the Georgia game. They play Georgia next week in Athens. That could be number 1, number 3, SEC East title on the line. Tennessee cannot get caught looking ahead. I don't think Josh Heupel allows it. I think with the crowd on their side, the offense playing just amazing football, I just don't see them losing this game to Kentucky. They've owned the Wildcats for, 3-4 decades now at this point. I don't see it changing on Saturday. It would be a massive upset if Kentucky can do it, but I think the Wildcats ultimately will fall just short, and it will set up the SEC East Championship game next week in Athens as Tennessee takes on Georgia. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Again, some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national analysts each of the last 4 years. Make sure to go check that out, sign up today, and become a part of our GE Nation. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. And we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.